Joseph, how are we doing on the live stream? Oh, we're good. All right. Let's please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have the approval of the memorandum of the October 4th, 2021 regular meeting. A copy has been posted. Councilors, any questions? I'll make a motion to approve then.
Second.
Second from Councilor Burke. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? The memorandum of the October 4th, 2021 regular town council meeting is approved by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Amy, anyone on the request to speak?
No, we have no request.
Any mayor administration update today?
No updates today.
Okay. Old business, we've got a consideration of the 2022 budget for the town of Zionsville, Indiana. This is ordinance 2021-11. Tammy and Greg, the floor is yours.
Council President, council members. Today we are having the adoption consideration for the 2022 budget. Just to go briefly over the timeline. The department started meeting in June and July of this year, and on July 14th met with the council members to present their ideas for the 2022 budget. In August, the departments also met with council and finance and their council liaison. On September 20th, we had Greg Garitas here, our financial consultant, discussing the revenue situation at the council meeting. On September 28th, we had a budget workshop that was available for the public as well as council. And on October 1st, we also had another budget workshop. On October 4th, we presented the balanced budget at the council meeting. And then today, October 18th, is the adoption consideration. And I'm here, and Greg is here to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Councilors, questions? I guess I'll start out. I mean, Tammy, from your perspective, as we look at today, and I know you sent over some information Friday, so thank you. I mean, what is the current fiscal health of the town? Is it healthy? Is it treading water here? Are we trending the wrong way, right way? Can you sort of give a macro update on your opinion?
Yeah, and I can let Greg speak as well, but we do have cash balances available. We have a rainy day fund that is funded at $1 million. And so the budget that we presented, again, was balanced with the revenues and the expenses. And that's maintaining the current service level, as well as giving the staff a 4% increase. And so I would say that the town of Zionsville is in good fiscal health at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Tammy. It's in good fiscal health. You do have challenges. As I'm looking out in the sustainability and putting that model together, and as soon as we get the 22 budget, we can kind of go from there. But you have significant challenges over the next 3 to 5 years. There's no doubt about it. So like I indicated very early on with the monthly finance meetings and those type of things, hopefully I call it heading towards the brick wall. You don't want to hit the brick wall. You want to tap it or go around it, hopefully go around it. And that's what we want to kind of guide through over the next 12 months as we get ready. Technically, I like to say in January, you start the 2023 budget.
So one of the things is I kind of called around to other communities around the metro area is that these challenges are not unique to us. These significant budgetary challenges. This is community wide across a lot of other communities within the metro area. Is that correct?
And I would agree. And this has been one of the most intense budget seasons I've ever done. And I've done a few of them. And so from city, town, county, you name it, it is a challenge. And part of it was, you know, you had a little more challenge because your income taxes went down. Some went up slightly. But the COVID impact and the lingering issues there made it tough, made it very tough here. So.
Tim did, as far as I did call around to other communities, and as far as our increase of 4% for our, this is just to the rest of council, to the other increase to our employees. Other communities did it a little differently, but they did other similar things as well. So we're not out of the norm. Some did more increases last year and are doing less this year. Some did similar increases to us, less last year and more this year. But everybody did something along the same lines. We're not out of the norm in that aspect either.
You're absolutely not. I've got several 16, I've got several 6%. I've got a lot of 4s, 5s. I've got counties that are having to structure up 16 for law enforcement. So.
And I think we talked about this last time, but I'm a little slow at times. So when we approve this budget, most everything's in the general fund, and it's are the spending within the general fund then limited to the category, the subcategory, or the actual fund itself? In other words, if we find ourselves in a situation where we need more office supplies, do we have to reallocate that, or is it just movable because it's all in the general fund?
No, so when the budget is approved for the category, the departments, and the fund.
Got it.
And then at the end of the year or during the year, the budget transfers can be made, and that requires council approval.
Got it. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
As we consider these expenses, I fully support the staff compensation increases as you've articulated in the past. We know they kind of did without a little bit last year. It's been a rough go. We got to make sure we're hiring and keeping good employees for the city. Given your cautionary comments about the next 3 to 5 years and not hitting that wall, but going around it, I know we got a balanced budget. Should we be more conservative in terms of holding back some dollars, or do you feel like that's just something that'll work itself out through 2023, 2024?
No, I don't think we should. I think we're right where we need to be. And hopefully the revenue will go back to, we experience a 4% increase in property taxes, and we experience a 3 or 4% increase in income taxes. Remember, I told you early on, that would have been $1 million in a normal year. Okay. And so let's get back to a positive normal year, and then we're heading in the right direction. Okay. And then I said, we'll look at a lot of other things over the next 12 months, try and I kind of akin it to looking under every rock and kind of seeing what we've got under there, and if there's maybe a little different way we want to do it in the future.
So you think that most of this will just be ideally would be worked out just through the market adjustment in terms of dollars coming in?
Through conservatism and market adjustments. Yeah. The floodgate will not open up. There's no way. So I don't think it would come back that quick.
Appreciate it.
Greg, the sustainability report, when will that be something that is solid enough that is actionable from an administration and council level in terms of changes that may want to be made and understanding the short and long-term impacts of those changes?
I guess I'm hoping that if we get through today, that over the next 30 days, I told you we've got a good draft. It's 160 pages. There's all kinds of information in there about the debts, the assessed valuation, the tax rate, and all the trends there, let alone the detail on the funds, the different funds. So that's what I'm expecting.
And speaking of funds, Tammy, we got the COVID money basically, and I didn't see that in the cash balances spreadsheet you sent. Is this somewhere else, or am I not understanding the?
So on the cash balance spreadsheet, that is for the funds that we are talking about today.
Okay.
If you look on the non-appropriated spreadsheet, I Oh, that's not on here. So Fund 176, it's $3.2 million.
Got it. And then as I look at these cash balances, and I appreciate you putting that together, my understanding is not like, government's not like a business where you're getting money monthly. You kind of get lump
Correct.
sum all up front, right?
Correct.
So if we're sort of looking at a cumulative cash balance of, in this case, call it $29 million, we still have to use that cash through the rest of the year for all expenses. Is that a true statement or no?
So these cash balances, when you appropriate a budget, it's separate than the cash balance. So you might have a larger, smaller cash balance than what's actually appropriated. So in the case of the general fund, we have cash balance and you have a budget. And some of that cash balance, you're not expected to touch at all. And so these
Yeah.
are not how much we are going to spend. This is just how much money is over in the bank.
No, yes, and I appreciate that. I guess I'm looking at how much do we have left to spend through the end of the year to sort of get a sense of what free cash is available.
So property taxes come in twice a year, so June and December. So these cash balances do not count that second half of property tax distributions. So we would be in a better shape probably than what these cash balance will end probably with more money.
And is just, again, sort of wrapping business to government, would the December distribution of taxes from property taxes, should that be considered 2021 monies, or should that really be considered 2022 monies because it's so late in the year and you've got to use it to get through the next June?
So they would be $2021.
Okay.
So basically the property taxes that we received in June, so through June would be about half of the property taxes that we would expect the next settlement in December. And as Greg mentioned, when we were going through the budget process, we look at that 18-month budget,
Yeah,
taking into account the December settlement that we're going to get in.
got it.
Yep.
But it does have to float you in a
Right.
sense,
Right.
into the 6 months of next year. And we definitely don't want Zionsville to get into where they have to borrow in anticipation of taxes. And so
No
that's
payday
what a
loans.
lot of people had to do over a period of many years.
Yeah, no, we don't want to do that. I agree with that. Other questions, counselors?
Where do we, as we start going through this, so in my meeting with with you guys and the firefighters, there was a staffing calculator completed that showed we needed 11 new firefighters. And that the immediate essential gap need over the next 18 month-ish was another 7. I was under the impression when I left that meeting, my notes show that we were going to include 2 and then go back next year for additional firefighters. Are there two new firefighters in this budget?
No, and there are no new staff included in the town-wide budget. And we talk about hiring 2 at a time or 3 at a time. That's per the sustainability to be able to sustain those people within the budget. When we had that meeting, we had not yet received the local income tax revenue decrease information. And so in order to achieve the balanced budget, we could not include those additional staff in that line.
So from that meeting, the 7 additional staff, 7 additional staff were essentially required to operate trucks, right? So because we've got 4 companies, they need 4 people. There are 3 shifts, 4 people, 4 companies, 2 people per unit, and then an additional 1-person unit. They came out with including rover calculations, gap collections, and so on and so forth, came out to an additional need for 7. My concern is with conversations with multiple members of the fire department that without those folks, we have an issue of not being able to operate trucks, services not being provided for the town. And I would like to know, obviously we can stagger this, right? So we'd need about $700,000 probably for all 7. We could stagger this out over the next year, so we wouldn't need all of it. I'd like to know how we address that.
Thank you, Counselor. You are right that we have needs in the fire department, but there are a variety of different ways that we can explore meeting those needs. Our desire at this point is to look at an early retirement offering and package, because some of those gaps accrue because of the time off that certain firefighters have available to them. It's not exactly a numbers game as much as it is an opportunity to recalibrate the schedule with some folks who may look at a retirement option as advantageous to them, and then hiring new folks in its place. So when we're ready to really get a staffing plan that takes into account what the actual problem is, we'll bring something back to you, but we're not ready to do that during this budget.
Yeah, Mayor, real quick, I appreciate you coming today. Is that a police statement as well, potentially? Because I've had similar conversations of a concern. Tammy made the mention of maintaining service levels, and that's a priority to me too. Certainly, as you drive around Zionsville and see how much growth is going on, I start wondering, how can you maintain service levels if you aren't adding people, but we're adding so much in population? So is that an opportunity? I know we're going to lose someone to the schools in the fall.
Yeah, definitely. We want to use data to inform our decisions. More people doesn't necessarily mean that we need to add the same level of individuals to any of our departments. I would say planning is probably the department that needs more people than anyone else based on all that growth. But we are definitely talking with the police department at the same time. They don't have a strategic planning effort going on the same way that the fire department does. So the information that we need to use with the police department is going to need to be a little bit more informed. But definitely Chief Spears will make sure we know when we're in a place, heading towards a place where we need to add more to our team.
So Mayor, based on what you just said about planning, are we planning to add a planner in this budget as well? Or are we going to come back later in the year? Because I represented them, and that was something that we
are adding one right now.
so that's taking that place. Fantastic. Well,
Yeah.
we got one. So
Thanks for your advocacy, Counselor. I appreciate that.
Is there a sense of timing of all of that? Because I'm interested in passing today's budget, but I'm also interested in quickly readdressing it based on the sustainability stuff you're working on, based on the plan you're working on. Things Vice President Plunkett said, you don't have to hire someone necessarily Jan 1. You could hire them sort of July 1, and you only cost you sort of 6 months of the year. But I'm worried about staffing, even from a morale standpoint, overtime standpoint, safety standpoint for police and fire. So I'm anxious to sort of start having that conversation again actively. Do you have a sense of timing?
At this point, we've got a strategic plan that has been underway for a while. We're going to wait and see what comes out of that document before we make any permanent staffing decisions. And that's where we are today.
Can I ask where the staffing calculator that was completed by the fire department fits within that plan? I mean, if we need them now, I'm just having a hard time wrapping my brain around why, if we need them now, we're not making every effort available to do it.
I don't know that we need them now.
I mean, I'll just say for the council, in communication with multiple individuals with the fire department, the concern is, I'm sensitive to the fact that we want to support existing staff and we want to give, cost of living adjustments and so on and so forth. There's also something to be said for supporting the existing staff by hiring the people that we need to operate the machinery. So again, all I have to go off of is what was given to me in the meeting, and the meeting says that they need 7 people now, 11 people long-term. And even if you hire them now, you're looking at mid-June or mid-year, likely to get them onboarded through the academy and trained and everything.
Which is why we really need to take a look at that early retirement option and see what that yields us.
So
So you can expect to see something coming forward to you with regard to this issue, but it is not going to be addressed in this particular budget presentation or discussion.
that's fair.
Amy, is
you.
that something maybe that we can get on a upcoming agenda? Just work with the mayor and
Yes.
deputy mayor, and that way we can have a follow-up on that, because it is, I think it is an active concern by everyone, mayor and council included, to make sure we've got adequate staffing levels for all public safety.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This question is for Greg. So with the sustainability plan, will that include these employees that will need to be added potentially or not potentially? Does that have anything to do with your sustainability plan?
Sure. At the
Okay.
direction of the mayor, we'll put in, a couple different options more than likely. But we participated in the call earlier or last week about the early retirement and all that. So we need some of those details to get worked out.
And
So
then
yes, it will.
you mentioned the other challenges that we're going to face down the road. Can you tell us a couple of those again? I don't know if I missed them earlier, but what are 2 or 3 of those challenges, those major challenges, so we can mindfully prepare for those?
Well, I mean, I had, number one was getting income taxes to come back.
Well, things that we can,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, I guess getting people employed and keeping them employed and from overall from the county. And then remember, starting to understand the way that income taxes are divided in Boone County is very, very important, because you've also got, and I had this information from Tammy, you got 5 different assessed valuations in your budget process. And it is my understanding that those do not grow. And I told you about the levy appeal and some things like that are other tools in the toolbox that I commonly use throughout the state of Indiana. And those tools seem to be a little less likely here. And that's where, I believe the council president asked me, if you're a king for the day, what would you change? And that might be one of them. And, so we want to look at the incremental, the mayor articulated very well. It doesn't necessarily bring in a bigger need, but incrementally every need adds up. So the division of income taxes is based upon the division of property taxes. And if the property taxes, I told you Whitestown's portion grew significantly, yours didn't. And so there's a whole schematic design that needs to be looked at there. Okay. And so that was definitely it. And then planning, if the dilemma of the balanced budget versus strategically utilization of the cash resources for phasing in certain personnel or for certain, it's a concept we really need to, I like call it cuss and discuss, because it really needs to be thought out. There are times where you might want to do it, and there's sometimes you might not want to do it. And we've got to go with the mayor's direction as we go through the whole thing. But that's something that, I had brought up early on too. So there's a lot of, I think we just need to look at this maybe a little different than you've looked at it for the last 20 years. And not that it's right, not that it's wrong, but let's look at it. Okay. And maybe there's a better pathway for the future, because remember, I'm always looking out 3 to 5 years. I don't care about last year. I care about where we're going to go, because it's going to be significantly different, especially if you're in and around Indianapolis. So, I see it every day. So, and I put together that list of 10 items that I'd be happy to share with you again. So.
Tammy, Councilor Trailer, who's not here due to travel, had asked you about postage and promotions. And I know you wrote us a detailed explanation, but I was wondering, just since we talked about that last meeting, for the public record, if you could just quickly go over
Absolutely.
what that was for.
Sure. So last year, the communications budget did not have a separated out printing and postage line items, and there was only a printing line item. So for 2022, we have the separated out into printing and postage. So in 2021, we partnered with two publications, The Current and Zionsville Monthly, for our monthly magazines. For 2022, communications would like to produce, design, and send this out in-house, which means that instead of paying for two publications, we'll be paying our own postage for these two annual publications. Other mailings that will cost postage are the 4 postcards that we plan to send out quarterly to the residents. And we have also budgeted for the annual report, so that's included in that line item.
Thank you. I had asked you about sort of the appropriation process. If something changes and you'd written back, okay, can you maybe talk a little bit about how that is enforced outside of kind of a gentleman's agreement?
So that would be dependent on conversations. I think the finance committee would be a good place to discuss that and processes and to be able to meet whatever expectation that council has on that.
Got it.
Tammy, what's the rationale to bring all that communication in-house? I mean, I feel like when I see both of those publications, pretty much anything that you send them, they publish, they're fairly light on content. It seems like there's plenty of extra room in there. Why would we want to bring that in-house and produce our own piece when we have two private companies that already do that and they seem very open to content?
That would be better addressed by the communications director. So I can't speak on that directly.
Mayor, if you're going to speak, I'll only ask if you come up just so that folks on there.
Yeah, so there's a cost to putting that content into those magazines, whereas we can control the dates that it goes out and things like that in-house to maybe line it up with our.
Is that equal cost in this particular budget? So
The
you're just really
communication-
transferring one group of spends to in-house. It doesn't cost any more to do it in-house, that you're suggesting?
Yes, the communications budget is flat.
And I did the communications budget with Amanda, and I walked away feeling fairly comfortable with her plan of attack, the directive, access to information for all departments, council, and the mayor. So it was good.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, Councilor Trailer asked to strike that from the budget. Is that going to occur or is that not going to occur?
Well, if in order for that to occur, it is not today, right? The first reading we passed was the budget as presented. If there was a sentiment by this council to agree with Councilor Trailer's request, I think we would have to maybe do a quick vote on that request in order to sort of do it unanimously, because it would then go into the budget that we would vote on. I'm okay with the communication piece myself. I understand Councilor Trailer's concerns. And certainly as we start relooking at staffing needs for police and fire, I'd rather staff fire trucks if we need them than send mailers. But I do agree on waiting on the sustainability piece of that. So I'm okay leaving it in because I think there will be some changes that will have to happen as sustainability comes out and as some of these staffing needs come. But I don't know if we need to do it right now, but that's just my opinion. If everyone else agrees we shouldn't have it, then we can certainly strike it and have that extra money. Are there any other questions, comments, changes? Again, Heather, we can always go back and change stuff. If in 2 months it comes out that, as Vice President Plunkett, and I tend to agree with them, if it comes out that we need more police or fire, and I think we need more police, if that starts coming out, we can make changes to this budget. We just can't move things around the funds. Like we can't move from general to police operating or general to parks or anything like that, correct?
Without the transfer appropriations, which you can do at the end of the year. And Tammy, you might want to speak to that specifically, just so that I'm clear. But you should be able to go back and modify the budgets within the broad budget categories if necessary.
And you can always do additional appropriations as we've done in the past as well. So outside of, if you wanted to increase a fund or department within the fund, then that's an option as well.
Will those additional appropriations fall under the realm of the sustainability piece? Because Councilor Traylor last meeting, and I tend to agree with him, said appropriations in general should go for non-recurring expense items. If we were backed into a corner and had to do a recurring expense item, will that be able to apply it in the kind of the sustainability formula, if you will?
So the sustainability plan is a living document. So it is updated as we get new information. So if our expenses were to change and we would do an additional appropriation, we would absolutely put that into the sustainability plan. And then we can go, when we're looking forward, know whether that's a one-time expense or if it's something that is escalated, like if it were additional personnel. So we would absolutely update that in the sustainability plan so everyone's on the same page.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's important because a transfer is one thing. A transfer is usually where you add 1,000, you subtract 1,000. Additional appropriation, you increase. If you do it in 22, you increase the 2022 budget. So that impacts the whole thing. And then when we come down next year and do the 630 reconciliation, it's all taken into account, all those additionals and transfers. So.
And Greg or Tammy, supplemental distributions that happened because the formula was off. I know we got one, I think, for the public safety lit. Typically, when do those happen in a given calendar year?
I think I explained to you that the Board of Finance, State Board of Finance, meets usually in February. They look at all 92 trust balances and sub-trust balances, and then they make a finding usually in March, April. And so sometimes there's, some things that take a little while from the Department of Revenue, but usually around April.
Has there ever been a situation where a community owes money, like they were over distributed when they relooked at that fund?
Actually, maybe 5 to 7 years ago, yes, there was negative trust balances, and there was a concept of makeup, and that was it hurt the current distribution.
Got it.
So yes, there are negative trust balances in some cases have happened.
Hopefully not this time.
You've seen it.
Councilors, any other questions? I don't want to rush through this. This is a big item, probably the biggest item we vote on. So Craig, are you good?
I'm just searching the minutes from last time.
All right, well, I'll come back to you. Brad, have you get everything answered?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Jason, do you need anything else?
No, I think again, just for council discussion, my frustration lies in, the answer is wait for the sustainability plan. And we've got a department that puts together an employee need, an actual need to provide the basic services for the town. And if my house is on fire, I'd much rather have the fire department show up because they got everybody there. I like Councilor Choi said earlier, he mentioned he can't vote for a budget with an operational deficit. I can't vote for a budget that doesn't provide the basic services to the town.
Councilor Culp, any other questions? Councilor Choi?
No, I still have the same concerns that I expressed in the earlier meetings, is that if we have such a strong need from, say, the fire department, that we have these, much to speak to Councilor Plunkett's point, that we need these additional people, and that is going to be at a part of a sustainability plan of reallocating later on, then I have, serious concerns about where that money would come from.
Yeah, we are sort of on I would agree. I'd rather have that information first. We're sort of on a state mandated timeline is the only unfortunate thing. But I do feel that the mayor will come back to us with what that staffing levels are, input from fire leadership that indicates that there is need for more staffing. I'd rather have more staffing than pay overtime, right? Because I want to make sure those guys and gals can take time off if they want it. So this will be an ongoing conversation and not just let's kick the can down the road. Greg, did you find what you were looking for?
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna side with your comment that you met with not promotions, with
Communications.
and it looks satisfactory to you that I won't pursue. I wish Trailer was here. If Counselor Trailer was here, if he was interested in doing that, but I'm going to go ahead and just side with your comments that you met with them and you're comfortable with that budget, Terry, item that was supposed to be striked. And we'll just move on.
Well, again, this is a living document, right? So if we determine in 2 months that, hey, there's other funding needs, the fire report comes out, the police report may come out, and we need more officers, then we can certainly readdress that, or anything in the budget.
I agree. Employment is and services are way more of a priority than mailers, in my opinion.
Right.
Tammy, do you, one quick question. Tammy, do we have anything lined up? I didn't work with IT, but I've heard some comments that IT is interested in some extra help as well. Is that something that's swirling, or is that something that's not being talked about at the moment?
Oh, I mean, we are definitely meeting with the departments and understanding the needs and the staffing requests. And again, with the funding being at the level that it is, then we have not had the opportunity to be able to add it into this budget. But if council feels, and if we feel that there is a significant need for it, then that's where the continued discussions and coming before council and having those conversations will take place, and asking for, additional appropriations is
gonna that's how that'll be taken care of.
Correct.
Thank you.
President Garrett, you had, if for some reason we did not pass this budget, you had kind of articulated and explained what happens from the state's perspective. You want to let the public know what that would be if we were to say we weren't passing this budget.
So if we did not pass any budget, and Greg can certainly keep me honest here, basically the state assigns us a budget based on prior year spend. So it kind of eliminates our ability to give input. But the bigger thing that happens is we don't get the increase in the assessed value revenue. So instead of it being effectively a flat revenue budget for us, we'd be down $500,000 or $600,000 and then have a budget assigned based on that being down. So not only do you lose it for that year, but then you start, the next year, your increase is based on that lower amount. So you've effectively lost that increase in perpetuity. So it's a bad thing. Anything I missed there, Greg?
No, you revert back to last year's, and you really will become, you'll be, a snowball will be on top of you before you know it.
And again, this is not a passing this budget and then we're done with it for a year. I think we can, in conjunction with the mayor, as things change, be active participants in. Budgets are kind of a living document, kind of like you talked about the sustainability report being a living document. So even though we're saying we're going to put $7 million in the general fund, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to spend it that way. We may make changes, the mayor may propose changes, and we can have that public discussion about the impact of those changes as well.
Yeah, I'm confident passing it. I'm with you that I wish we knew a little bit more about what was going to happen here in the next 3 months, but we don't have that luxury. No community has that luxury. And, I'm sure we'll be coming back to this in 2022 to kind of recalibrate a few things.
Unless there's any other statements, I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 2021-11, which is the consideration of the 2022 budget for the town of Zionsville, Indiana.
Second.
There's a second from Councillor Choi. Amy, I'll let everyone weigh in individually. If you can do a roll call vote for me, I would appreciate it.
President Garrett,
Yes.
Vice President Plunkett,
No.
Councillor Burke,
Yes.
Councillor Choi,
Yes.
Councillor Culp,
Yes.
Councillor Melton,
Yes.
Ordinance 2021 is adopted on final reading with a vote of 5 in favor, 1 opposed. Thanks, everyone. I know it was a lot of work. Next, we got a consideration of the 2022 salary ordinance for the town of Zionsville, Indiana. This is ordinance 2021-12. We did talk about this last time. Joe is here if we've got any questions for her on this. Any questions on salary ordinance or comments?
Is this, I do have a question, Joe.
Sorry, Joe, I gotta make you come up.
Can you go through the process of some of these positions have $20,000 differences between midpoints and maximums and minimums. Can you explain how you get, bless you, how you get from, maybe where they are to a maximum or to a minimum? Is that something you go through, or is that something that the department heads consider? How do you get to those numbers?
So you approved bringing everybody to midpoint in August, end of August. So everybody is at least to the minimum now, and everybody will be at minimum even after we increase the bands 2.1%. So that's a good starting point. People are in various positions. There are some people that are at midpoint now. We want to move people to midpoint through a process as appropriate. First quarter of 2022, we will be working with, I will be working with the department heads to create a performance evaluation process. The theory is that the lower people on the scale that perform better would get a bigger increase in 2023 than somebody who's high on the scale and perhaps is not performing as well. That has not been established yet. The 4% increases in 2021 or 2022 will be a flat across the board. Does that help or?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I guess for example, I mean, you've got, public information officer at 66,000, low point 58, high point 75. Is that a decision to go to that 75? Is that through the process that their department head would go through, or is that with you? Does that come back to us? Is it an arbitrary decision made by someone?
Oh, it certainly isn't arbitrary. The scales were created, the minimum, midpoint, maximum were developed by our consultant based on all the information from market and neighboring towns and that kind of thing. So that's where people are in that position. Here, it would depend on performance, perhaps what else they bring to the position, but the increases would not be arbitrary. They would be bound by budget. They would be bound by performance. We haven't created that exact process yet, but and it won't be the department head by themselves. It'll be the mayor, it'll be myself, it'll be the department head, certainly informing on that. We will also want to, when we create the performance evaluation, we will want to make sure that it's in line with all the best practices that are going on today.
This is almost the identical process I use in my organization. Jason, a lot of it is tenure. So giving people a chance to grow and feel like they haven't maxed. If you put someone at the max and there's nowhere to go,
right,
then they may be looking for another job. So
and the other side of that is there are some positions that this is the maximum for that position, sure, and you need to be promoted, or you need to move through some other process, or be content in the fact that this is a $60,000 position and I'm going to get an increase every year, or maybe a small bump every year, but I'm not going to make $20,000 more than I make.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. I just want to better understand the process.
Counselor Plunkett, is it you're asking though, like, so that if somebody gets a $20,000 raise, does it come to the council, or is that what you were asking?
Well, my understanding is that it would be done through salary ordinance, through the budget. I mean, it's not like you're just going to arbitrarily make a decision again.
So-
It's
The council approved the bands, and what individuals actually earn would be taken care of through the budget. Therefore, you do have a say in that. But
But mid-year, if there's deemed a raise
Mhm.
of $20,000, where does that come from if the budget was already set? So we've approved the bands, but we haven't approved
it-
that raise, that
Sure.
specific raise for, say, 2022.
So I know that's an extreme, example, but because nobody's department has an extra $20,000 in compensation to spend.
That's exactly
but-
right.
Yeah, and so if that was the case, we would have to come to you to approve that.
So
But in theory, if there was a shakeup in the department and there was extra funds available, and there was a situation where because of certifications or whatever the situation is, that person needed to get an increase, and it was $1 an hour increase, and there was space in the department's budget to do that, that could happen. That could take place without coming to the town council because it's within the existing budget.
And Craig, this sort of goes again to the question I asked Tammy earlier about things are in the fund department and category level. So, and this is kind of a ridiculous example, but the mayor has a budget for salary, right? And that's in general mayor personal services. If there was a sudden raise, you couldn't take it from the promotions budget because that's general mayor services and charges. To move between those, per what Tammy told us, would have to come back to council and say, well, I want to give a $20,000 raise from promotions, but I need to move it into the salary bucket. Therefore, it is switching categories, and that requires a reappropriation.
town council.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct. And to Joe's point, given the budget, there's no like excess salary and wages just sort of sitting around waiting to be used. So
you mentioned a process that you would need to finalize with the mayor and the department heads. Is that regarding raises, giving the raises? Is that?
It's really the methodology and how we as a group want to move through those bands and how that works with performance evaluations, because it needs to be tied to performance.
Thank you.
any other questions for Joe while she's out here? All right, we'll make a motion to approve the consideration of the 2022 salary ordinance for the town of Zionsville on final reading. This is ordinance 2021-12.
Second.
Second from Councilor Melton. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Ordinance 2021-12 is adopted on final reading with a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. We have one new business item. This is the Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department grant agreement to Town of Zionsville and dissolution of Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department. Andy, are you, oh, there you are, Andy.
Morning, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Andy Baroker. I'm an attorney at Fakery Drinker. With me is Brian Miller, the current president of the Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department, Inc., a longtime member and board member and the president of and a firefighter. I'm here this morning just to describe to you the grant agreement and the what that means and why we're doing this, and in connection with the dissolution of the Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department. And Brian's here to answer questions and provide any information back that you need. Not sure how much you've had involvement with this, so I wanted to just give brief background and willing to answer questions.
Thank you.
So the ZVFD was incorporated on August 27, 1958. So has been here and servicing the town for a long time. The ZVFD, the Volunteer Fire Department, was the sole provider of fire and public safety services, ambulance services for the town until 2004, was purely a volunteer driven fire department. That's not uncommon in Indiana. There's still a number of volunteer fire departments. It was commonly done for decades, if not over a century, in Indiana, in communities all over. The ZVFD raised funds for training. It bought equipment. It provided scholarships, provided bereavement funds to widows and families of firefighters who were injured or killed in the line of duty. It held its awards dinner and the annual pancake breakfast that many of you know. The town's full-time professional fire department started planning in 2004 to create or establish a full-time fire department, which you have today. And that really became fully functional and established in 2007. I was the town attorney for 13 years from 2000 to 2013, underwent and saw that process from the town's perspective, worked with Chief Van Gorder and Deputy Chief Miller during that time, and was involved in financing the fire stations and buying equipment and those kinds of things. So one of the reasons I'm involved here, because I have a history with that process. As a result, the ZVFD stayed in existence. It entered into a services agreement with the town every 2 years since 2009 to continue to provide and function and provide services to the town. Primarily, it continued to provide ambulance services, hazmat and spill cleanup, billing services for ambulance runs, and provided and rented equipment and vehicles to the town and the fire department that the ZVFD still owned. The ZVFD, importantly, held the Medicare and Medicaid provider license as the authorized billing entity for ambulance services for the town, as the town did not have this license and chose not to have it, and it was convenient for the ZVFD to continue that. The ZVFD was also listed as the insured owner of the equipment and vehicles that it owned and that the ZFD utilized. It paid for that insurance coverage. That was different insurance coverage that the town of Zionsville had and obtained. And so that worked out as well. And it paid the cost for that insurance to keep those under the ZVFD ownership umbrella. Subsequently, under that services agreement, the ZVFD paid annually to the town a substantial portion of the dollars that it received in providing the ambulance services, doing the billing that it got in return, and paid those to the town annually under those agreements. Currently, the ZVFD owns 11 firefighting or ambulance vehicles, and it also owns quite a bit of various equipment, including scuba gear, AEDs, various firefighting gear, shipping containers, computers, boots, cots, computer monitors, and griddles that it used for its annual pancake breakfast. So that those are listed on exhibits B and C of the grant agreement as to what vehicles and what equipment that it currently owns and that it proposes to transfer title to the town and the fire department. So again, I said the ZVFD is an Indiana nonprofit corporation. As such, there are relatively strict and specific dissolution procedures that it has to follow as a nonprofit corporation to dispose of its assets and to dissolve and to go through that process as the town has requested it to do. So the board and the members of the ZVFD met and approved a plan of dissolution on February 23, 2021 of this year. We filed articles of dissolution for them with the Indiana Secretary of State and the Indiana Attorney General's office. The grant of the company's assets has to be to another nonprofit or a governmental entity, and a document has to be prepared and agreed to convey those assets, thus the grant agreement that we prepared and that is in front of you in order to comply with state and federal law in conveying title of those assets. The ZVFD, since it approved and filed the articles of dissolution in February under state law, are still in a winding down phase. And I'll tell you just a few remaining things that has to happen after this grant agreement is done, but it is still winding down as state law provides or allows for it to do. I just want to touch base briefly on a couple of the points in the grant agreement that you have before you that we have been working on with the mayor's attorney, Amy Nooning, and the town with Heather since February. So the parties are the town council, and the Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department. You, as the town council, is a party as you are the town's fiscal body. And we would like the ZVFD, it feels it important to have you assure the purpose of the grant restriction of both the funds and the vehicles and the assets continue to be served, which is the sole and exclusive use and benefit of the Zionsville Fire Department. Thus, the funds, the vehicles, and the equipment, we would like to continue to be utilized for firefighting and public safety purposes. There are reps and warranties in the agreement by all three of the parties, fairly limited, much smaller than you would typically see, but just to say this doesn't violate any of the other agreements that any of you have. We have the power and authority to enter into this agreement, really relatively brief. There was a release from claims by the town against ZVFD and the volunteer officers, directors, and members. Again, since 1958, this entity has been operated by volunteers without compensation for decades, even firefighters. Again, they were provided equipment at times. The training was paid for them at times, but again, not compensated as volunteers. So it's appropriate to have them be released in order to convey those assets. There's indemnification of ZVFD and its officers, directors, and members as unpaid volunteers. There is a covenant by the town to continue insurance coverage of ZVFD as a limited named insured for a period of 5 years after the grant agreement is signed. We've worked with Todd Settle and the town's insurance agent and underwriter to provide that. There's no cost to continue that coverage. So that is a commitment to do that. We will terminate the 2020 services agreement that the town and the ZVFD have been operating under. That will be terminated as part of this agreement. And then the other part is we will assign remaining receivables for ambulance billing services that were provided by ZVFD prior to May 1, 2021. Those will be transferred and assigned to the town. Just on the services that have been provided, to give you a brief update, ZVFD ceased providing ambulance and hazmat spill services on April 30, 2021. The town and the ZFD assumed providing those services as of May 1. The town did apply for and obtained its Medicare Medicaid billing license to perform and receive reimbursements from Medicare and Medicaid for ambulance billing services, as you have to be a licensed Medicare provider to do that. The town also obtained insurance coverage for the fire assets, which it did not previously have insurance coverage over, and it obtained that insurance as of May as well. So in the final winding down, there are a couple of things that President Miller and Jeff Beam as the treasurer still need to do, which is file a final federal and Indiana state tax returns, the 990, which we will do upon before or by the end of the year. It also has to file a final Medicaid cost report. So the current assets I gave to Heather and would ask her to distribute those. It's a revised Exhibit A that I got updated from the treasurer, Jeff Beam, yesterday, just to give you an idea of what's being transferred. It's approximately $812,000 in cash. And you'll see it's broken down by CPR funds, donations, hazardous materials. There's some ambulance services billings outstanding of about close to $100,000 that we'll get from SIPROMs will be assigned to the town, and then the remainder in general fund. This amount excludes $12,226 in firefighter support funds. Those are in essence bereavement funds that are restricted and were given to the ZFD for that restricted purpose. So we will transfer those to a newly created nonprofit entity, not affiliated with ZVFD or the town, but called Boone County Firefighters Foundation Corp., which is sort of a union for firefighters in Boone County. Again, those are bereavement funds for widows and families of firefighters hurt or killed in the line of duty. This cash balance does not reflect any SIPROMs payments. Those are Medicare payments that we have received in October or expected to receive in October. And there will be a small holdback from the total balance in order to pay the service fee for SIPROMs for October and to finish the remaining legal fees for September and October to complete the winding down. That's the brief summary of that. I appreciate you allowing me to be here and talk with you or give you that background on that. President Miller and I are both available for questions to respond to anything you might have that you'd like to discuss. Thank you very much.
Are there, I mean, volunteers, so there's no pension obligation. Is there any other ongoing obligations the town is taking on in regards to current or past volunteers by assuming the assets of the entity?
No.
Okay. Are there any known pending liabilities that we'd be taking on?
No, and I've talked with Amy and with Heather about that. I mean, that I sort of highlighted, right, the remaining claims are really a SIPROMs, their billing company that they still have some AR with. They're providing that service still, so there could be a service fee in October.
Yeah.
And then legal fees to finish paying us. There are no disputes, outstanding claims, legally asserted claims. Brian, tell me there aren't any. No.
Was the board unanimous in their vote of the article of dissolution? Okay. Why would we not do this? Is there any reason why? I think I'm not asking that there's like, oh, you know.
If you chose not to do it, again, as a nonprofit, we would have to find another recipient of both the funds, the equipment, the vehicles. So whether that would be another governmental entity or a nonprofit who we could get to take that, like the Boone County Community Foundation.
Yeah.
But we have approved the articles of dissolution, the plan of dissolution. We have filed that. So the ZVFD is in effect dissolved and is in a winding down phase. So we have to provide transfer these assets to some entity, and we prefer they go to you for use by the Zionsville Fire Department today.
I'd prefer that too.
So Josh, this motion is to accept them, not to make any.
Well,
determination.
this motion is, to accept the grant agreement that has been provided to us.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Because you would sign the grant agreement along with the town, along with the ZVFD. So and the grant agreement in essence provides that we are assigning the assets
right
to the town.
So nothing about the dissolution is part of our conversation today. It's really just accepting the assets.
Correct. And we did put in some language. I know that there was an initial concern, both of the mayor and her administration, Josh and Jason as council leadership, regarding any outstanding claims, that we may not be aware of. So there is language now in the agreement that the volunteer fire department had to disclose all of the claims prior to execution of the agreement. That's something I know that Amy and Andy worked on, putting, more specifically into the document, as well as the continued insurance that Andy mentioned, to cover any, claims that we're not aware of, that could come back on the town. I think that was the biggest concern from the outset, is what would we be assuming at the town level that we weren't aware of? And that, I think, mitigated against that. Sorry, my voice is just magically gone away. So
Yeah, that's good.
Do we know what fund these are going into? These going into the general fund? Is there a firefighter? Does it go, do we know?
It should go in the general fund, as the purpose is restricted to Zionsville Fire Department, but I will let Tammy and or others address that as to what that may go to.
As a grant, then this has to be in a separate fund. So it will have its own fund number and be assigned, and council will appropriate it.
And do we need to create that fund at some point here in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Tammy. President Miller, is there any, this is outside the scope of what you're asking us to do, but the volunteer fire department has done a lot for this community. Is there any plans with the dissolution of the entity to recognize the entity or the members of the entity in some way? Or can we help with that, to just kind of acknowledge their volunteer service to the community?
We as of last week, started those conversations and looking to set a date for that. What that is, I can't tell you.
Yeah, sure. No.
I've tried to wrap my head around how do you appreciate, thank that kind of service. I don't know. It's a lot. And for the members, when the vote came, it was emotional. It's a lot for them to let go of, I guess, for lack of better terms. So I don't know what you do. I'm open for suggestions. So hopefully we can wrap some great minds around that and figure out what that is. But
cookies, everyone loves cookies. Make sure that's part of it.
But I don't know how you do about several decades worth of cookies. So,
yeah, well, that's fair.
I'm assuming we have names of all the folks who volunteered over the years. I could picture something with.
Yeah, we do. And one of the things we tried to capture as we made this transition, we lost some of that over time, just because we were so busy in the trenches, transitioning from all volunteer to a career department and focusing on a career department. We probably lost sight of some of that. So one of the things we try to do, and everything always goes back to COVID, we tried to do prior to COVID was we had at least quarterly, we would invite the retirees that lived in the area, and some of them would travel even where snowbirds would come back during Florida time. We would have breakfast at the firehouse and get out old pictures and spend time with them. And that grew pretty quickly. We always did a December dinner that was pretty well favored by the volunteers to come back. tell us how bad we have it now. So that's quite the opposite of that, actually. So they enjoyed coming back, enjoying a meal, and just some general conversation. But how we continue that, I don't know. You know, there are obviously some significant funds here that we're transferring. If we can earmark some of those, the whole purpose of this grant agreement is to make sure that the monies, the assets, stay inside the fire department and can be used with the needs that are determined by the chief and the executive staff to do that, and not just kind of go to a general fund and disappear, just as unfortunately how some of the volunteers feel as they kind of disappeared. I know that's pretty harsh, but we do need to capture that. You're exactly right. And how we do that, I don't know. I've been thinking about that as we started those conversations, and I don't know what is appropriate because it's a pretty big ask and a pretty big thanks to do. It's an aging group too, as you can imagine. So as time goes on, we lose more and more members too. So,
well, if there's anything council can do to help, either funding or even recognition in one of these meetings, we're happy to do it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We'll certainly try to wrap our heads around that.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for your service on that, as well as the president. And I have a concern, just being a Perry Township representative. Maybe the administration can answer this, but when we dissolve this Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department, from a service aspect out in Perry Township for the residents out in Perry, is there a plan? Is there something that, and this may not be for you guys, and I understand that, and I'm just wanting to make sure that the services that the volunteer fire department have provided out in that rural district are still going to be maintained at the same level as they were with the volunteer fire department.
Thank you, Councilor Melton, for the question. I can let you know that Deputy Chief Frost and myself are meeting routinely with Perry Township board members and the Fire Chief, Doug Everett. One of the things that Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department did not have was a dissolution plan leading up to this to prepare them for that. And there has been a lot of emotions involved with that regarding how some of the membership feels to this day. So one of the things that Josh and I have talked about with Doug Everett and Tony Carroll was making sure that Perry Township develops a plan that they're comfortable with in preparing for their dissolution. We've talked to them. It also goes hand in hand with the fire department strategic planning effort for what does that timeline look like for when that transition would occur, but also making sure that Perry Township's talking about that with their members, with those individuals that are involved, and help them develop a plan that they're comfortable with so that we can do it the right way the next time we have to do this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Councilors, any other questions for President Miller or for Andy? All right. Well, I'll make a motion to accept this grant agreement to the town of Zionsville and dissolution of the Zionsville Volunteer Fire Department, and thank them for their service. Second, Vice President Plunkett. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The grant agreement is accepted by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. Councilors have any other matters today to discuss?
And Heather, if you'd have him get a signature.
We've got the approval of claims. Any questions on claims as they came through? All right, I'm the motion man today. I'll make a motion to approve claims. Second, Councilor Burke. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Claims are approved by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. And I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second from Councilor Culp. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We are adjourned by a vote of 6 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting is scheduled for Monday, November 1st, 2021 at 7:00 p.m. right here in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice will be posted in compliance with Indiana open door law. Thank you, everyone.